ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, and today I am joined by my co-host Luke Street to bring to you another exciting edition of Top Hat Chat. Today, as you can see, we are in my microcomputer room to talk about how the NES could have perhaps somehow succeeded in Europe.
Wow, yeah, that didn't happen, as we know.
Well, obviously, yes.
So, you have all the ideas, Mr. Idea Man.
Well, if it bloody happened, we wouldn't be surrounded by all this cool stuff, would we?
That is completely true. I mean, this is what we've ended up with.
We're saying that it was all around before the NES anyway, so it all still existed, so that was a bit of a stupid point I just made.
Well, thanks for that.
However, maybe they wouldn't have carried on manufacturing it if Nintendo somehow broke through, perhaps, as quickly.
Do you think?
Maybe. It would still be around, but they would have been a little bit less. Like, I believe that Spectrum Plus 2 standing over there came out after the NES, I think.
You think?
I'm sure. I think it came out in 1989.
Well, I trust your facts.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, we'll hang on to that fact there.
Yes.
So, what are these monstrosities?
That's such a ridiculous question. How old are you again?
27.
Okay.
27.
Okay, I'll excuse you, because to be fair, I'm only 31. And the only reason why I have such a fond attachment to these, because I actually had an uncle who was 12 years older than myself, and he handed me a fine CPC 464 when I was just 4 years old. No, 3 years old, when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So I got one of these in 1989, and it looked bloody cool in my 3-year-old's bedroom.
Okay, awesome. So how do you boot Windows 95 on this?
Boot Windows 95? With great difficulty, I would gather.
Okay.
Yes.
Alright, so the topic is about Nintendo.
Yes, and how they could have potentially succeeded in Europe.
I think to start that question, we have to briefly mention something that we've already spoken about today.
Yes, we've talked about it so many times. Atari, yes.
We have to bring this up again.
Okay, first of all, as stated in another video, I don't know which one we're going to publish first, so we might have visited this or we might not have visited it. We'll have to see.
We'll do it in order.
Yes, I theorise that in the United States of America, partly why Atari did so well is I would gather that they probably got a lot of sole distribution rights within retail outlets. So for example, if a storefront was going to sell a games console, they would have only sold Ataris. And then that later caused the crash because they never got these bloody cool things instead. Well, the market never adopted them for whatever reason. Like, I infer it was because probably, like I said, I believe storefronts were probably locked down to exclusivity deals. Okay. I'm just making deductions here. And then the NES came along several years later and they 100% had exclusivity deals with shops to be the sole games console.
Because Atari had hung on too long and died a slow death.
Yes, so basically Atari monopolised North America and then Nintendo monopolised North America. The same thing happened back to back. Yes.
Okay, so without Atari, there would be no Nintendo. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, I suppose you could. It's the butterfly effect, isn't it? Because it took Atari to crash for Nintendo to rise. Because if Atari wasn't so dominant, then maybe there would have been more gaming companies doing well, or companies with games on their systems doing well in the United States. Which would have made it harder for Nintendo to break through if there was lots of...
There wouldn't have been a gap in the market.
Yeah, no, the gap wouldn't have appeared, whereas that's the first way the first way Nintendo could have potentially succeeded in Europe, I'd say, as if these things didn't exist in the first place.
Okay.
Because firstly we had Atari, which did okay, and then it slowly got phased out to some degree by the more superior microcomputers, which could give you far richer gaming experiences. So by the time the NES came out, which was late in Europe, I might add, like 1 year later than the US, I believe, the Master System was already released in Europe. And the Master System is a more powerful system than the NES. So by the time the NES arrived, they had to compete with the Master System, the Amstrad CPC, the Spectrums, the Commodore 64, the Amiga, the Dragon 32. There was just an outrageous amount of competition. So that was the first barrier. They would have succeeded simply if that level of competition wasn't there, but that's just a ridiculous proposal to put forward in the first place. Like, they would have only succeeded if the competition wasn't there. However, I believe there's perhaps other ways they could have done well too.
Okay.
Like, let's theorise here. If you've got a region which already got loads of systems doing well, let's go back to the United States, for example. Apparently, when the NES was released there, gaming was on a low. So what they did in order to get into their market was they redesigned the Japanese Famicom to look like a VCR and paired it with Rob the Robot in order to disguise it as a toy or an entertainment system, as they put it, to get it into stores.
Sneaky.
Yes, so basically the way in which they penetrated the market was marketing a games console as a toy. Whereas that wouldn't have gone down in Europe because gaming was more sophisticated, as you can see. Look at this. This is what the sort of things we used to play games on.
Well, again, there are a lot of these still around.
Yeah.
So they must have sold really
exactly,
well.
They did. 4 million of these sold, I believe, and they wasn't even marketed in America, so that's incredible.
I think
they're like 6 million Spectrum sold, and this was, like I said, a long time ago.
Yeah. And
these were only released in certain parts of the world. But yes, talking of the NES, like I said, they market it in a very bespoke way, bespoke to the American market. Maybe Nintendo could have done better in Europe if they released a bespoke product for the European market rather than just releasing the American product for the European market. So essentially, disguising the Famicom not like a VCR, but packaging it to look like a microcomputer instead. So releasing a Nintendo Entertainment System with its own monitor, with its own keyboard, and a cartridge slot on the keyboard. I just think that would have done so much better because it just would have looked more appealing to the market they were trying to enter.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being the case. I mean, I think
this is what I associated with gaming.
No,
products like this.
I think a keyboard would have been a bit of a push.
Why? That's what we associated with gaming.
Because they would have had to have redesigned a lot of their games.
You say this. That's not necessarily true because you wouldn't necessarily have had to use the keyboard. It would have just been an aesthetic, and you could have just used it as a monitor to like write documents and print stuff off.
Well, considering how Nintendo seem to love their ridiculous peripherals, that doesn't sound like it would have been saying that they could have done this.
There is a keyboard for the Famicom in Japan. They have a keyboard, an actual full keyboard. It already exists, a Nintendo keyboard.
Well, there we go. I didn't know.
So all you would have had to do is put the system inside a keyboard, and then it would have looked like a product that fit the marketplace.
That doesn't sound so hard.
It's not that hard at all, and I don't know why they didn't do it. Maybe arrogance?
Stubbornness?
I don't know, yes.
We're not redesigning our system again.
Yes, they could have done so much better. Another reason they've done terrible, which people have probably heard before and time again, because YouTube's an echo chamber, and I've said it loads myself, is, again, the distribution deals what Nintendo had in the UK and other countries were awful. I believe the main retailer that sold NESs at home was Boots Pharmacy. So if you wanted an NES, you had to go to Boots.
Lovely.
The pharmacy.
Well, that sounds like the sort of place that you'd want one.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
To be fair, I got a Game Boy when I got
exactly.
mumps. I got
from Boots?
No, I got mine from Argos, but I was ill.
Okay.
So,
where are you going with this?
Sickness and new games consoles go hand in hand.
Okay, that's true.
I was stuck at home with the mumps and I was ill. My mum got me something to cheer me up, so that's how I got my first Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
There we go. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
I suppose so, yeah.
Let's do it now.
Sick people, yes.
Yeah.
But you get all sorts from Boots back then. I think they sold like Commodore 64s, all sorts of gaming stuff. So yes, Boots Pharmacy used to sell games, which is weird now.
Could have ended up with a Boots Megastore.
Yeah, very strange.
Went the other way.
Yeah. But, so yes, distribute into more stores. That's the obvious one. Disguising their product as a microcomputer rather than a games console, because, like I said, it was released to look like a child's toy. And that wasn't necessarily the market you'd want to go for. Like, I was a child, and that's what I was used to playing on. Yeah. So,
do you know what else would have really helped? Selling their games for £1.
Of course, yes. A lot of microcomputer games you could buy for £1. And so, what do you think is going to happen when suddenly you go to your shop and they're asking for £60 for a game instead of £1?
Yeah,
they're going to be disgusting. Yeah. And then they find out they've got these games and they can't copy them, or for them to give copies to their friends. It's not. Yeah, it's
to give them out free with magazines.
Yeah,
that would have been the way they should have done it.
It would have done so much better.
Yeah, and then I mean, we probably wouldn't have had a Super Nintendo if they would have done that. But it's still something that they could have done because that's what they were competing with.
Yeah, there was impossible to compete. When you look at it, that was impossible to compete with. Like, if you've got things like this established, where you can buy games for £1 and then you can copy them and give them to your friends, and then your friends can give you copies of the games, why would you buy another system which has a similar, like, graphically, they're pretty evenish. Each of them have got their advantages, like Amstrad CPCs offer more colours on their screens, whereas so like the NES would have better scrolling, for example. So they've both got their limitations.
So it's surprising that we even really got a Super Nintendo, really, considering how bad it did in
What?
In Europe. Well, how bad the NES did in Europe. The fact that we got a Super NES. America saved the Super Nintendo.
The Super Nintendo in Europe did not do well because of Nintendo. They only did well because of Capcom. Capcom, Street Fighter in the arcades. They had like Street Fighter arcade cabinets in like every pub when I was a child. So everyone had played Street Fighter in pubs. They saw it was released on a console, the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo sold like hotcakes during that time period. So it was nothing to do with Nintendo marketing at all. It was an external company.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fluke that it even took off in the first place.
Yeah, which is interesting, I suppose. There's lots of ways of looking at this, I suppose.
There is. It's this very interesting topic, like trying to revise history and work out how it could have gone other ways.
Yeah.
So I feel like I talk about this all day because it's quite interesting, stimulating, isn't it?
Yeah, we can try, I suppose. Yeah, so America saved Nintendo.
They did.
And then Capcom then saved Nintendo.
Yeah, people say that Nintendo saved the video game industry, which I personally think is balderdash, because if Nintendo never entered the US gaming market, then a few months later Sega would anyway, then Sega would have dominated the US gaming market. So no, Nintendo did not save the American video game industry. As you stated, America saved Nintendo. So Americans, be proud that you saved Nintendo. Don't give those Japanese people the credit. It was you. You saved Nintendo, not the other way round.
But, on the other hand, do you think that more people would still be gaming on what is essentially a PC if Nintendo hadn't come along? Would the PC Master Race be the only race?
Oh, we're talking about Europe here. Although, as what's the word? As impactful as Street Fighter was in the Super Nintendo, the Mega Drive outstripped the Super Nintendo by an absolute margin in the region. Like, so many more people had Mega Drives, it was ridiculous. So the Mega Drive, by the time Street Fighter was already out, was already established. So if any system you could credit for defeating the Micros, it would have been the Mega Drive. The Mega Drive killed Sega.
Thanks, Sega.
Micros. And Sega had their own Micro as well, which you don't hear often about.
No? Do they not? What was it?
I believe it was the Sega SG... Oh, God. I'm getting tongue-tied now, I'm not even going to say, but they do have a Micro. So yes, now you made me look like a bloody idiot because I can't remember the name of the system off my head.
It's alright.
I hate not knowing information.
I'll edit it in. So
I hate not to be able to recall facts.
Anyway, yeah, so, I mean, I suppose, thanks Sega for ruining PC gaming for all of us and making everything more expensive.
Yes, indeed.
So, I'm glad that the Dreamcast failed.
Yes, I suppose they had it coming, didn't they?
Yeah.
When you think about all the
bastards,
they killed the Micros, bloody Sega. Cheerio. Also, no, I won't go yet.
No, okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let us know in the comment section how you think Nintendo could have potentially succeeded in Europe. What would be your strategy to combat these behemoths? Cheerio!